Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Nisha. Hi, PT.
Hello.
All
How are
good?
you? Look like you are sitting in a very beautiful place with good weather.
Well, actually, a plane's just going over, which is a rare event. But we have some rain, which is the first rain we've had for months, and so that's really good for the trees. So I'm very happy about that.
That's great.
So that's Peter Hudson, our conservation head, a great friend and a fabulous photographer. And as you know, he is our conservation head, and he's the editor and all in all for PT Aware. And he is going to talk about our latest edition, which is going to be focused on Great Indian Hornbill.
Good.
So PT, let's begin.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's great to see you all again and to be involved. And let's jump straight into the latest edition of PT Aware. And in this, we're going to look at the Indian Great Hornbill, which is also known as the Great Hornbill, the Pined Hornbill, and it is the state bird of Kerala. And I know that there's lots of people out there watching us who come from Kerala, so I think this is a rather special opportunity. So if you want to get the magazine, and the magazine is free, I encourage you to go to our website, which is pawstrails.com, where you can download the magazine for free. And Paws Trail is all about conservation photography and community photography, and we do it better than anybody else. So in that respect, this is a great opportunity for you to see something free, and we would encourage you to get involved with us, and we would encourage you to submit photographs you may have for any future editions of PT Aware. But I want to go back to that cover photograph, that beautiful photograph by Vinesh, which captures so much of the biology and excitement of these remarkable birds. These are beautiful birds. And immediately when you look at this, you see you're looking at the female above with the white eye and the male below with the red eye. Just incredible birds. If we move in a bit and look at some of the characteristics, you can see there the really clear red eye, beautiful, and these very large bills and these incredible casques. But I'm going to come back to that. I want to just talk about this remarkable thing that they have differences in eye color. Many birds, in fact, do have, some birds have red eyes, divers, some birds like purple gallinules, and some birds have the white eyes. But I don't know many birds that have a difference between the male and female like this. And I wonder if this is something to do with their nesting biology, that when the female is in the nest, this allows the male to see her eye through the nest hole, and this also allows him to do, and also for her, of course, to see his red eye. So it is very characteristic when you see the two different sexes. The difference is in the casque. The male has this black area under the casque, while the female can have a red area under the casque. They both, of course, have this remarkable bill, and then these differences in eye color. So the differences in eye color are really important for distinguishing the sexes. As I said, other birds do have them, and here's a typical. This is a purple gallinule, which has a red eye, and this is a white ibis, which has a white eye. But in both these species, the young have dark eyes, and they lose this as they grow older. In fact, in humans, quite often, particularly in people in the Western world, they're born with blue eyes, and the blue eyes then change color as they grow older as well. So this is perhaps part of an aging process, but it might also signal that these birds are mature birds. This lovely photograph by Danu is a photograph of a young bird, probably soon after it's left the nest. I mean, maybe even within a couple of days after leaving the nest. And while I don't know the sex of this bird, it does still have the white eye, and its bill is there, but it doesn't have the big development of the casque on top of it at this moment. The plumage is basically black and white, but then that with this remarkable colors in the feathers, these incredible colors of yellow. And we would automatically think, oh, well, this is just a natural part of the bird's plumage. In fact, it isn't. This yellow plumage comes from the preen oil that the bird takes from a gland at the base of its tail and then spreads on its feathers to make itself yellow, and I suspect make itself more attractive to hornbills of the opposite sex. So they actually paint themselves with their own gland oil to make themselves look rather special and beautiful, I think. What an incredible bill these animals have. And it's just like the toucan's bill. When you ever watch them taking fruit, they use this bill like a pair of tweezers where they can very carefully lean over and take individual fruit off a branch. And in this lovely photograph, another one by Danu, he shows very nicely with this bird in flight how the male is actually just holding it in the tips of the bill. Here it's coming it back to the nest with something else in its bill. I can't really see what it is, but very delicately holding it. And one of the things you also notice is this part of the bill is hardly used at all because this is open. It does in the males and in the females when they're adults, they can't actually close the bill. It's only the tip of the bill that is really important to them. On top of this, they have a casque, and that is this area that sits here above the bill. And I've brought with me a casque from another hornbill species. I'm a biologist and I can get access to museums, and this is a black hornbill from West Africa, and this incredible casque. And one of the things that strikes me right away about it is really very light indeed. There's hardly any weight to this thing, but it is absolutely huge. What's it for? Why do the birds have these? What's the real function of this casque? Well, one suggestion has been that it's an identifier so that one species can see the casque and say, oh, that is a great hornbill or that is another type of hornbill. But there's some confusion over that, and biologists generally don't think that's important because sometimes the hornbills do indeed interbreed. I quite like the idea that it's an acoustic resonating chamber because there is a connection between the top of the bill and the whole casque area. And when they call, they have to give a very loud resonating bark of a call. And I think this could help that in that respect. And both the female and the male have it. So, and it's bigger in the males, so that could account for it. One suggestion is that it actually acts as a hammer. And these birds, when they're knocking into trees, when they're digging out nest sites, this could help to carry that. But I sort of wonder, well, why don't woodpeckers have these big resonating chambers? Another possibility is they do this incredible aerial headbutting, where sometimes they will fly and actually hit each other head to head. And that might be part of their display or part of the male's territorial defense. We don't know much about these species, but this beautiful photograph by Danu, I don't know if this is headbutting. I don't know exactly what is going on. And these actually, I'm not even sure these are mature birds. I think they are, but it looks as though they're interacting. And I think this is a tremendously exciting photograph he's got here, and you'll see it in our magazine. Filming, whoops. But I think what happens is straight after mating, the females come to the nest site. The male and the female will spend years, perhaps, looking for the ideal nest site. They don't breed till they're about 5-6 years old. They form this very tight bond, and then they explore the rainforest until they find a nest site. And usually this nest site has a very vertical entrance to it. And the belief is that this allows transmission of cool air in and hot air out. And so it might be helping the birds when they're sitting in the nest site. After mating, the female enters the nest site, which I find incredible. She doesn't wait until she's about to lay the egg, but she goes into the nest site and then she closes the hole using a lot of feces, a lot of old food to help sort of hold it up. And in some areas, and this is confusing in the literature because some areas people say they could find no evidence that they use mud, and in other locations they said they do use mud to close it up. But they close it up so she can't get out and predators can't get in. She then sits on those eggs, and she will stay in there for 100 days. And during that time period, she is totally dependent on the male, who must bring her food to keep her alive and must also bring food and pass it through this gap. And look at this, Seema's got a lovely photograph here, caught in the action of actually just the male actually interacting. And this is one of Nisha's photograph, where you can actually see the fruit going from the male through the nest hole to the female inside the nest. Really quite incredible. And you can see how she is entombed in that hole and how she has closed up the gap. So it's just this tiny little gap. And she stays in there until the chicks are about half grown. And then she knocks out this plug of droppings and old food, and she then flies out. During this period, she loses all her flight feathers, so she has to regrow those. And after she leaves, the elder of the two chicks then fill up the hole, close it again so predators can't get in, and they stay in there for another 20, 30 days. The male in this period brings not only fruit, but because a lot of other birds are nesting at the time, he goes and raids other birds' nests and will bring the nestlings. And this is a high source of protein, which really helps the chicks grow because they've got to grow to quite a big size. And bringing just fruit is not that easy because fruit does not contain a lot of protein, while animal life, such as this bird here, and here's a fabulous photograph of one actually flying in with a bird in its mouth. And here's a rodent, and they'll bring lizards and other animals as well and bring those into the site to feed the chicks while they're growing. Both those photographs, of course, are the males. Now, the one thing that really astonishes me about these birds is that they must be in perfect synchrony. There must be a beautiful bond between the male and the female. The female is totally reliant on the male during those 100 days that she sits in the nest. And so they must develop this pair bond and this strong pair bond so that as soon as the female is in the nest, he knows he must start bringing her food. And they practice this. You see here an example where the male is courtship feeding the female, bringing her food, trying to get that bond together, trying to form that very secure bond of trust before she goes into the nest. And of course, they do these amazing displays, aerial displays. They spend every minute together, and the male continues to bring her food, court her, and they have this really fantastic bonding before they actually copulate. And can you believe this photograph? Mohammed actually caught them copulating here, which, since they only copulate once or twice in each year, this is a remarkable photograph. And many congratulations to Mohammed for getting this and getting such a clear and beautiful photograph, since these copulations can take place well up in the tree. So the other thing they do, and I want you to hear, is the call. And what they do is they do antiphonic calling, which means that as one calls, oh, I've turned the volume off, put the volume back up. They answer each other. The male calls, the female calls. Male calls, the female calls. And I think that's obviously contact calling. That's obviously saying, I'm here, so am I. I'm here, I'm coming. I'm here, I'm with you. It's that sort of thing, but it helps to bring that pair together. so that they form this remarkably strong bond. And of course, they'll stay together. As long as they're successful with their nesting, they'll stay together for the rest of their lives, spending all their time together so that they can get a very good pair bond. And once that's done, they can breed every year. And these birds could easily live to be 60 years of age. So, you know, they could easily have 50 breeding seasons within them, which is really, really remarkable. I think it's important to talk. So that part of their biology is really important, but also their food requirements. And they're known as the gardeners of the forest. What a wonderful description of these birds, because they're frugivorous, because they feed on fruit, and they are essential to dispersing the seeds around the forest. So they take the fruit and they go and leave their droppings in another part of the forest, fertilize those droppings, and so the seeds can germinate and another tree can grow up. And this is really important in the rainforest, where there is incredible diversity of trees. And you will sometimes, if you find and identify one tree and look for a similar one, you might have to go several kilometers before you find another tree. So this is a really important characteristics of rainforests. The diet, as I said, is fruit. And it feeds mostly on figs, which are pretty nutritious, but it also feeds on the fruit of the peacock chase tree. Now, I think this tree here is indeed the peacock chase tree. And I've done some research to try and find out, and I can't identify it for sure, but I think this is a peacock chase tree that this bird is in, and it's feeding. It's not a highly nutritious form of food. So it's got to eat 30% of its body weight every day. That is incredible. And it does that because it has very low protein. Interestingly, I can't find any records of anybody ever seeing these birds drink. And I think that's because they get all of their water from the vegetation and from these fruits. So that's an interesting thing. The thing about fruiting events in rainforests is that they are very random, or they appear random. You will see one fruiting tree in one area, and you may not see another fruiting tree for another distance. And so it's important for the animals that live off it, such as the fruit bats and the hornbills and the toucans in South America, that they can move large distances, find these fruiting trees, and then they're able to feed on it. So outside the breeding season, they often group together in these big groups as they go off looking for the fruiting trees. And Dana did a great job in capturing this. Not easy to get this sort of photograph at all. But of course, once they get to these areas, so they interact with other animals that are there for the trees. This black langur, is it? I will ask Hermes later. He might be able to identify what that primate is in the tree. But they interact with other animals that are there looking for the fruits and taking advantage of it. But of course, that's the biology. Let's now move over and look at the conservation status. Let's look at the conservation issues and some of the actions involved. And the International Union for the Conservation of Nature lists this species as vulnerable, which means that it is declining, and it is declining at a fairly rapid rate. And we should be alarmed about it, and we need to take action about it. So the great hornbill lives in the wet evergreen forests of Asia. And these habitat is absolutely crucial for its survival. Not only does it need forest, but it needs big, extensive areas. And in this photograph by Nisha, she captures the essence of that, the story of how this bird needs to travel through big areas to be able to get the food and to find the nesting habitats. And that in its essence is what the conservation of the hornbill is about. It needs safe, good nest sites in these very big trees, and it needs to be able to move between areas and particular get to these very big emergent trees as they come into fruit. So in a rainforest, we have multiple layers. The canopy, when you walk through, you look up at the base of the canopy layer, but over and above that are these special emergent trees, these very big trees. These are the trees that often produce much of the fruit, and they're also the trees that have the nesting holes. Sadly, when they do selective logging, these are the very trees they come to cut down, because these are the trees that are so big and so valuable for wood. And when they do that, so they destroy the habitat for the Great Hornbill. This is the distribution map of the Great Hornbill in Asia. And there are two populations. The first population lives through the foothills of the Himalayas, down through Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, right down the Malaysian peninsula, and then over into Indonesia, I think. Yes, I think it's Indonesia. Put me right later if I've got that wrong. And the other population is present in the Western Ghats. And these two populations are separate. There is no connection between them. What I was alarmed to discover was that only 5% of the habitat remaining in the Himalayas is suitable for these birds, because those emergent trees have been lost, or because the habitat has been fragmented and it's not that big an area for them to do it. And this habitat loss is taking place at an alarming rate. Over the last 55 years, 26% of the forest habitat that these hornbills used have been lost. Now that's just over 3 hornbill generations. The habitat their grandparents knew is very different from the habitat that they are experiencing today. And so we know that they must be declining at least at this rate. So they must be declining at least 26% over 55 years, because their habitat has been lost. On top of this, we've seen that selective logging for those big emergent trees. And we also see that once you start fragmenting the habitat, putting roads and opportunities for people to get into areas, the hunting increases, the poaching increases. So the suspicion is that the decline is in the region of about 40%. Might even be higher than that. And that's a pretty alarming. Now, if you can see this slide, and Hermes, can you just, oh yes, thank you very much. If you look at this slide, this is a slide, I'm going to go to the Western Ghats. And one thing I was really surprised about was that the Western Ghats go through so many of the western parts of India, all the way from Gujarat right the way down to Goa. And this is a series of maps from 1920 to 2013 illustrating the loss of habitat over that period. The first thing you will notice is that in the southern end of the Western Ghats, we've lost a huge amount of forest. A vast area of forest has gone altogether. While further north, we've seen fragmentation and down to just small areas. So it's really just in these parts of Kerala that the forest really remains and is suitable for the Great Hornbill. On top of that, in both distributions, in both the Western Ghats as well as in the Himalayas distribution and down through Malaysia, it's been a traditional form of headwear, and many cultures utilize these animals both for food and for doing things as well. And so it's very important for conservation that we keep so many of these emergent trees, these special trees that bear the fruit that the birds can utilize. And that's what we need. And it's the big, extensive areas. So we need to start forest reclamation. We need to start planting, and we are going to be able to keep these birds into the future. Now let's move on and talk about conservation actions. What can be done to try and help these really special birds? Once again, I want to emphasize that it's really pristine forest. Secondary forest is not good enough for these birds, and we need this large areas of pristine forest that they can occupy. And I'm going to take you to, and my pronunciation may be wrong, to an area in northeast India, just north of Kaziranga, at Pakke Tiger Reserve. And here, the local people are the Naishi people. And it's traditional for the Naishi people to wear the headgear of the hornbill on their head as part of their culture. And there's been a very interesting conservation action here with a community initiative that has brought together the local people by the Wildlife Trust of India to start taking on using fiberglass beaks in the way they behave, in their culture. So instead of using the beaks of the original people, they now use artificial fiberglass bills to actually wear on the tops of their heads. They have also started a hornbill nest adoption program in which they protect nest sites. So what they do is people will pay 6,000 rupees a year, which I think is just over about $100, and they can adopt a nest. The Hornbill Nest Adoption Program then tells you what's actually happening with that nest, and the people report back. But that money is used to support nest protectors, and in particular, the Naishi people who live there. So the local people who are rainforest people are now encouraged to be involved in the protection of the nest sites. So far, they've raised sufficient funds so they can protect some 40 nests a year. And these people are given training, they're given salaries, they're given the equipment they need to use, modern equipment, to go out into the rainforest. They are using cameras, they use trail cameras to record the presence of birds, record what's actually taking place. And they do quite a lot just in increasing awareness about what's actually taking place out there. Every January, they run the Pakke Paga Festival, and Paga is the Naishi word for the Great Hornbill. So they ran this special festival where they encourage people to learn about the hornbill, and I think also to encourage the opportunity for more people to get involved in providing funds to help protect these fantastic birds. And I really like this because this brings together local people into conservation of their own habitat. And I totally and utterly agree with it. And, you know, I feel a responsibility for conservation in Africa and South America and in India. But it is the local people who must be involved if conservation is going to proceed and conservation is going to be successful. Now let's change the location. Let's go from northeast India down to southwest India, and let's go to Kerala, where on the Chalakudi River, and if my pronunciation of that is incorrect, I apologize, but this on the Chalakudi River, back at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, they were going to put in a new 23-meter high dam to go across this river for hydroelectric power. Now, at that stage, this would have affected 4 hornbill species and nearly 2,000 of the local Kadar people. The 4 species of hornbill was, of course, the great Indian hornbill, the one we're discussing together, as well as the Malabar pied hornbill, the Indian grey hornbill, and the very special Malabar grey hornbill. And this is the only location where all 4 species of these southern Indian hornbills actually exist. So conservationists consider this a very special site. At that time, there was a tension between the conservationists and the local people. There were accusations made that they were still killing the hornbills, and the local people denied this. But then once this started taking place, once they started talking about developing a dam there, the two sides combined. And I find this really interesting politically, because the Khadar people and the local conservationists then started to work together. So in this area, there were 9 settlements and 174 families of the Khadar people. And they traditionally use the rainforest to go and collect honey, and to go and collect damar, which is a type of resin that you can get from some trees. And they would also go in there to fish for food and things like this. They were classified as a primitive tribe, and because of this, they were partly recognized under the Forest Rights Act in India. And when it came to the protection of this area, they decided to invoke the Forest Rights Act, and the tribal welfare was important for the forest protection. So it was the fact that the Khadar people were working together with the conservationists, and it was the fact that the Forest Rights Act recognized them and their right to these forests that stopped the hydroelectric dam from being produced. At the same time, the Western Ghats Hornbill Foundation was formed, and they, together with the Kerala Forest Department, set out a new program of protection for habitat protection and training. And they've taken 72 Khadar youth and they've trained them in conservation and monitoring. So currently they're protecting something like 114 nests, making sure that people who go into the rainforest never fell those trees, because they're the trees that the hornbills use. They're preventing people, particularly their fellow youths in the Qatar people, from joining poaching rings. They're preventing wildfire, and they're involved with tree planting, which I think is just wonderful, because it really allows this opportunity for local people to get involved. And it's this local scale of action that is going to work so well for the conservation of this beautiful, stunning bird. And this, I just love this bird so much. It's so beautiful with those colors and this nesting biology, and just their behavior, the way they interact, and the way they are the gardeners of the rainforest. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm very grateful you joined us. I want you to be aware that this magazine is once again a free download available on our pawstrails.com website. And in 2 months' time, I will be sitting here again, and I will be talking about the next edition, which is on Indian elephants. So if you have photographs of Indian elephants, if you have interesting images that help to show us about the biology and conservation of these species, I would encourage you to get involved and to submit those through our website. So going back to you, Nisha and Hermes.
Yes.
I hope that was interesting for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Good. So have you got any questions coming?
We haven't got any questions, but there are a lot of messages. Nisha, we can't hear you.
And they said, a lot of appreciation messages from people. Yes, on the talk, definitely. When Peter is talking, that's quite obvious that it's completely pure science, and you bring the life of the species into your words, which is so amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it was this is a Kerala species, and I'm not a Kerala person, so I find it perhaps Kerala will adopt me, and then I can think of myself as a Kerala.
We are working together for last 10 years together, so you are semi-Keralite. It's okay.
and we know that Kerala paratha.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so this bird is very special for us. Like, we used to go every year to shoot this to a place called Valpare near that Chalakudi river, next, like almost near to that place.
Yeah.
We used to go every year to shoot this bird.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And the monkey that you were showing, it's a Nilgiri langur. It's an old world monkey which is mostly found only in Western Ghats.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I was thinking that was in the Himalayas, but you're right. Thank you very much. What a special animal that is. Yeah, really, really great birds. And you're lucky to have this as your local state bird, eh? What a great bird to have as your state bird. I don't even know what the state bird of Pennsylvania is.
The easiest way is we're doing one session on that, then you will know everything about the bird and which bird it is, and then about the whole life.
Yes.
We have a question from one of our friend Fayaz Pai. Fabulous talk. How do we adopt a nest?
So that's there are websites, and if you wanted to adopt a nest, well, I know in Northeast India there's a website you can go to and you can just sign up. I don't know about the Kerala side, but that's a good point. We should find out.
Yeah.
And I think you can, yes, you can do that, and that's through the Western Ghats Hornbill Foundation. So you go to the Western Ghats Hornbill Foundation website, and I think you can do it through there. So either of the websites, and you just go in there and say you're interested in adopting. And I love the fact that they have a festival every year to celebrate the hornbill up in the Northeast, and just to celebrate it, and that's great. And we do similar things here for our storks. And if you go to places like Bosque del Apache, they have a big celebration there as they pass through. So it's I think it's a great thing to celebrate the birds, and it gets the young people involved, and it helps them integrate into society, and they go, oh, you're a hornbill person. Oh, tell me about the hornbills. Gives them some status as well. That's good, I think.
And I think there is one more question.
There's one more question from Paul Manuran. Sir, how can we use a bird's eye and features to understand more about them?
I think that's a great question. And it's one of the things that my very good friend Tim Burkhead actually does. And he's a very famous ornithologist from the United Kingdom. And he spends his whole life trying to understand why the animals do this in their behavior and their biology. And he's written a whole series of books about that. And I would encourage you to read about it. And it tells the most remarkable stories about the sexual behavior of ducks, right the way through to why an egg is the shape and the whole biology of an egg. So one of the things that really startled me was with this magazine was the huge biodiversity of birds. You know, there are nearly 10,000 species of birds. There's something like 6,400 species of mammals. And if Cynthia is watching, she would remind me immediately there are 900,000 insect species. But just an incredible diversity of species and biology that is just screaming out at us to save and to study and to appreciate. And I find this studying and understanding the biology, such as the biology of the eye. How on earth do they have red eyes? They have white eyes. How does this change? And there's not much information out there, but it's just fascinating. And I want to go and look at all the other hornbill species and find out about their eye color. Is this throughout? And I even read one paper which said red eyes are only found in divers. And I go, well, that's wrong for a start. So truly fascinating biology. And I would encourage you to go and enjoy yourself on the web and in the literature. You can really get some great insights. Gives me great satisfaction.
Yeah, Cynthia, exactly. She said, yes, Peter, a million of them.
We got an informative message from Sanjay saying that the Hornbill Festival is happening in Nagaland from December 1st to 10th.
Oh, really? Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. We should all go.
So you want to go to Western Ghats as well as to Nagaland?
Yes, of course. Why not?
We'll combine it together.
Yeah, thank you very much. That would be good. Not, yeah. So I think the nesting period is from January to June for the hornbills.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes, so they avoid the monsoon period.
Yeah, November. You remember, Herme? We saw them, spotted them in November, right?
February.
February. Okay, November or February. You know, we did 3 trips to see them, and the third trip, first trip we haven't seen it. Second trip we saw them, but no photography. Third trip was lucky.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I just wonder what the ecotourism is like, and I wonder if part of this conservation action should be setting up, hides in areas that people can rent out, which allows the people to both protect them and allow people to take photographs of them, much as I talked about in the spirit bears in the last one.
So right now in Kerala, at least in Valpare, the condition is it's inside the place where we have been. It's inside a tea estate, and we have absolutely no access. So we were using 600 mm with the 2x converter and standing miles away and capturing this.
Yeah, most of the nest and their hide, everything is located inside the tea estates.
Yes,
But
and it's private property.
Access, yeah.
And again, there is another team. I forgot the name of the organization which take care of these particular trees. There is a team over there, and they kind of check every now and then. So even if we go somewhere near to the area, they'll make sure we are going to be away from that particular section itself. Because there were a couple of incidents where people went very close to the tree and tried to disturb the habitat or try to disturb the birds. So that's why they were very strict on these rules. And now I think even the access is a problem.
Yeah, even there are situations where the hornbills leave the nest and left.
Because of the photographers.
That's dreadful. That's really dreadful. And that's why ethics in photography is just so important.
Really important, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Birds must come first every time. The animals must come first.
Yeah.
And that gets photography a bad name as well, because when people behave badly, and I've seen this in America as well. So I was down in Arizona and I was doing some bat photography, but I went to see if I could photograph these trogons. And my colleague said, "Oh, there's a trogon's nest that's just there. So if you walk along this path, you'll see down into the forest." And I got up there and then looked down, and there were people by the nest. And I wondered what was going on. It turned out that the previous day, some photographers had been so close to the nest, the birds had left, and then the young had jumped out of the nest because they were starving. And so it's throughout the world. And this behavior of photographers to try and just get their picture is just totally unacceptable.
Yeah, that's very sad. In fact, there was another good story related to people, because from one of the hornbill nest, I can share it later. One of the hornbill nest, the chick was abandoned by the parents, and it fell down from this. And this particular bird went to a nearby house, and they were feeding the bird. Now the thing is, the bird was kind of become so attached to the kid of that particular house, and they were sharing food, and a beautiful story was there. So there are people who protect them, as well as there are people, the photographers, who disturb them. So it's very sad, but I think, as Peter said, we all should keep our photography as a second part, and we need to do everything possible to protect these beautiful species for the future.
Yes.
Even if you don't protect, don't disturb them.
Yes, don't disturb them. The photography is to support them. It shouldn't be to destroy them.
So I do think there's an economic thing where you can, just like with the spirit bears, where you can say, here's a stretch of beach, and it wasn't very long, and you can sit here, and you pay to go there, and it's a limited number, just 3 or 4 people are allowed at one time. And then you can sit there all day and photograph the animals if they come past. And there's the local people are there to tell you, that's not acceptable. You have to keep back here. You mustn't do this. You mustn't make a noise. And they would correct you if you did anything wrong. Because quite often people don't know how to behave in the countryside. You know, they often, you hear them walking through the forest making so much noise, and you think, what on earth's that? Is that an elephant? Oh no, it's a photographer.
It's not the local people. It's usually the photographers, honestly.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But there again, the photographers can bring money, can bring recognition. If it's done right, we can really have a huge impact on conservation. So, you know, if I wanted to shoot hornbills, and I do want to shoot more hornbills, I'd be happy to pay a couple of $100 a day to sit and hide with an opportunity to photograph it.
Yeah.
So Hari Warijakshan is saying in Tenmala, Kollam district, there is an ecotourism project. I don't know if it's particularly for hornbill or something else.
Yeah, but even I'm from Kollam, but again, I have no idea about this. Definitely, we can check it and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you make a note of that and send me a note, Nisha, and then I can look it up, because that would be really great. That was very grateful to him for bringing that.
Yeah.
To our.
And again, we can check it with Dhanu as well, because he know few sports in this particular area where we went for shoot, and he may be able to help us.
Yes.
To do something on that side too.
Yes, his photographs are really, really astonishing.
Oh, I mean, we know him as a kid. Now he's a grown up. Okay, so it's like talking to a little brother for us. An awesome photographer. Okay, an amazing guy.
Because taking photographs in rainforests is not easy, because all the action is taking place right up there, and you're right down here in the dark to do it well.
Yeah.
And so, you know, people like Cynthia, you have to use flash quite often to get the light, and it's really challenging. So it's remarkable, the photographs that people like Danu and Cynthia get. Really is.
And Danu, in fact, he have seen black leopards in that area, then as some very rare species from that particular side of Western Ghats. And in fact, I asked him if he can join us once, to share his experience, and he said he'll check it.
Oh, thank you very much, Danu. I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah.
Greatly respect your photographs.
Yeah. So, yeah, on that note, I think, we kind of covered all the questions.
So next week, I don't know who is coming next week.
Surprise. So we have on 5th we have Jayaprakash is coming and going to share his experience as a photographer, and how it's going to be more of his experience, sharing his life and his mission and his photography. So it's not just photography, but how photography can influence a person and how it can change life. So it's going to be a life story along with photography.
Yeah. Well, I would also like to ask our supporters of PT Aware what species they would be interested in seeing, on which species they have good photographs of that could be used in future editions. So I would like to hear from them. And, you know, the next edition on the Indian elephant should bring out some very great photographs. And as we all know, there are huge issues there.
Yeah.
But I would like to hear if people had specific species that they were interested in.
In fact, yesterday, after we announced the elephant as the subject, Seema, one of the contributor over here, and she is again a fabulous photographer from Kerala. She said she know a researcher based in the northern side of Kerala, and he is doing a study for last 15 years or something like that. And she said she will talk to him today and get his contact so that we can get him involved in the project as well, and get his input too.
Yeah, and Cynthia, Cynthia have mentioned something to you. She used flash only for macro photography, not for birds and mammals.
Okay, I think Peter's video is stuck.
Okay.
It looks like.
Yeah. It's stuck.
Yes.
So,
it's stuck. I think there is some internet connection or some problem. Peter just disappeared.
He covered almost all the segments. Yeah.
Now, on that note, see the next edition, next talk is going to be on Saturday by Jayaprakash Bhojan. So join us same time for another fabulous life story. Okay, so yeah, Peter sent me a message. Let me just check it. Oh, sorry, computer closed.
Okay. No
Okay.
issues.
No issues. So on that note, let's catch up on
Today.
and then yes, and please be safe. Please take care, and take care of yourself and take care of others too.